in an interview, Coby White gives some love to Billy Donovan and how Billy Donovan helped his development last season. We're going to talk about why Coby White, proving that last season was not a fluke, is one of the most important things for the Chicago Bulls offseason. We're also going to talk about why Billy Donovan probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon, continue the rumors about the Chicago Bulls trading up, and how could trading up actually have ripple effects on the rest of the roster. We're going to get all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. So, Coby White was interviewed by a North Carolina writer in regard to, just some of the things he's doing in North Carolina, his history, things like this. It wasn't necessarily an interview built around the Chicago Bulls. And he was asked about the resurgence his career had last year, the career year that he had, being in the running for most improved player. And Coby White's response was this: I think I just got more of an opportunity to take advantage of. Over the summer, Coach Donovan came to me and told me he believed in me and he had confidence in me. That meant the world to me, that he believed in me, and he's continued to coach me and push me to be the player I'm forcing him to play and that I want to become. He's always said he's not going to stop coaching me until I become what I want to become. That's a great quote by Coby White, an amazing quote by Coby White. And Coby stepped up and proved it. We knew a lot. I talked a lot about around this time last year going into next season, how important it was that one of the Chicago Bulls young players stepped up and really had a big year to really raise the ceiling of the Chicago Bulls. Now, when I did say that, I didn't expect Zach LaVine to miss most of the season. I didn't expect Patrick Williams to go down for most of the season. Again, I was hoping that those guys were still going to be around as well, right? And that, a season like Coby White had would have really just kind of raised that ceiling hugely for the Chicago Bulls. But when you look at how Coby White improved last year, he improved in his role, voice in the locker room, his output improved hugely. He improved in almost every facet of the game. And so now there are going to be more eyes on him to say, all right, now how much of that was legitimate? And I've seen a lot of Bulls fans, in the comments of this channel, other things to talk about, well, the Bulls can't build around Coby because that would kind of be repeating the same mistake that they did with Zach LaVine. And I understand that. And I actually don't disagree with that at all. And that's not a knock on Coby. That's just that at 24 years old, what Coby White has shown so far is that he can be a player that you can build with. But I don't think he's necessarily shown that he's a player that you can build around. Now, if he takes another leap this season and is a little bit more consistent, maybe that view does change. But overall, regardless of building around or building with, Coby White has shown and proved that he's a player that is now a building block of this team. And even some Bulls fans do disagree with that. Not everybody's going to see everything the exact same. But Coby White repeating what he did and refining it some, right? The consistency being there a little bit more for them. Kind of in the fourth quarter, stepping up some. Now, Billy Donovan got to give him, those opportunities as well are hugely important as well for next year. And all the talk about trading up, trading Zach LaVine, moving in, getting whatever. Coby White is probably going into the season, when you look at it, as one of the most important Bulls, if not the most important. Him and Ayo Dosunmu, but Zach LaVine seems like he's not going to be on this roster. If the Bulls have their way and have their desire and are able to move on from Zach LaVine, seems like Coby White's not going to be. Zach LaVine's not going to be here next season, which steps it even further for Coby White. Yes, Zach LaVine was not on the floor very much last year, but when you start off the season not expecting it, it puts you in a different position as well as far as on the prioritization list. DeMar DeRozan, we'll see what happens with DeMar, but if DeMar DeRozan also either leaves or sign and trade, whatever, if he's not on the Chicago Bulls roster next season, that would put Coby White as one of the biggest veterans on this team as well, outside of Nikola Vucevic and, of course, the Torrey Craigs and Javon Carters and stuff like that. But, that puts Coby White as the veteran voice in a lot of ways, him and Alex Caruso on this Bulls roster. And so, we'll see what happens there. But Coby is in a position where a lot of Bulls fans are going to be looking to see what does Coby bring. And so, seeing the videos that I posted over in the shorts of him already working with Dribble Too Much, doing those type of things are good. Coby White has always been somebody who puts in the work in the offseason. And so I don't doubt that he's putting in work to improve, but we got to see that come in the game. And so, hopefully the Coby White, the confidence that he had last year, that he's built off on, seemingly being also trusted by Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan got to trust him a little bit more in certain situations. But it's good to hear that and see, because we've seen it with the videos and him working out, that Coby I think he's going to be out to prove as well. And I think that missing out on most improved player could be something that motivates him as well coming into next season. And a Coby White that even takes his game a little bit further. The 19 points per game that he scored last season, upping that to getting that to consistently being about 22, 23 points per game, that takes it into a whole different level for Coby White. And so it's not like he didn't have months of that. You look at the month of February, over 20 points per game there. The month of January, 22 points per game there. 22 points the month of December. He just has to take those 3 months that he did and make that the full season. And then we're talking about a much different Coby White. But with Coby White's comments in regards of bringing up Billy Donovan, it makes me realize as well that Billy Donovan, as much as some Bulls fans are tired of Billy Donovan, he's not going anywhere. The players, and I know that, shout out to my boy Wynn. I always mention Winton. I mention Winton when Billy Donovan comes up. I mention Corn when Zach Edey comes up. That's just the two people that, are big supporters of this channel, have been around for a long time, and I know how they kind of sit on it. But Billy Donovan isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And that's not me saying that that's something that I think should happen. Do I think that at the end of Billy Donovan, hell, maybe even before the 2 years are up remaining on his contract, that maybe the Bulls could look at some other things? Yeah, they could opt to go a different way with Billy Donovan ultimately. But Billy Donovan is so entrenched here with the players. I said it before. Outside of Zach LaVine, the players really do like Billy Donovan. Keep in mind, in the whole Billy versus Zach debacle, it was reported that the players actually backed Billy Donovan over Zach LaVine. So, Zach has his issues with Billy, and there are legitimate issues with Billy Donovan's coaching. I don't want to make it seem like Billy Donovan is this perfect coach, because he's not. There are flaws in Billy Donovan's coaching philosophies and scheme, but much like I said over with Matt Eberflus on the Chicago Bears side, is that when you go to changing the assistants and completely re-overhauling your assistants, to me, that says that, hey, we still believe in this coach. We just think that we need to bring in some people that maybe have the strengths where he has weaknesses at. And Billy Donovan and how close he is with Arturas Karnisovas, how close he is with the Reinsdorfs, I don't think Billy Donovan's leaving. And I think Billy Donovan, to the credit that I can give Billy Donovan, I do think that the young players, that he does believe in them. He doesn't play them, which is a whole different conundrum. But when you hear how he talks about them, when you hear when they talk about the conversations that they have with Billy, right? And I know the Derrick Jones Jr. things and him talking about his role and how he was utilized, and that's all fair, right? But Billy Donovan does do something where he connects with the young players on this team. He needs to connect more with them on the basketball court and put them in better situations to develop. But there's something there as far as why this front office and this ownership group and the players seem to like Billy Donovan so much. But as it comes down to it, Billy Bubblegum Donovan, unfortunately, I mean, not saying unfortunately, but just in the realism, is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I know a lot of Bulls fans put this thing on, well, let's move on from Billy. Billy isn't this, Billy isn't that. And you're right. I'm not here to say any of that is wrong. But this front office is seemingly much like the Denver Nuggets with Mike Malone, have sit there and decided we're good with Billy. We riding with Billy. And let's hope that doesn't send us into a place where we're looking back like, hey, we should have probably moved on for Billy about 4 years earlier than what we did. But Billy Donovan's going to be here. And, that continuity part is definitely going to be something that sticks around. We'll see what happens with the roster. But the Chicago Bulls are not looking to make a head coaching change anytime soon. The best chance that the Bulls had to move on from Billy Donovan would have been if Billy decided to take the Kentucky job, had that been something that he wanted to do. Otherwise, Billy Donovan is seemingly going to be here for a while. But with that said, all right, well, a lot of rumors are circling about the Chicago Bulls trading up, right? It's becoming louder and louder. You're hearing more and more on that. The Athletic, ESPN, there's been some other sources as well. I think Yahoo Sports as well, have all talked about the Bulls trading up. And we've talked about the potential of them, moving up, trading Alex Caruso, getting an additional pick. But realistically, we got to have a conversation about what trading up could mean. Per ESPN, saying that Donovan Clingan is being discussed between teams like Chicago, Memphis, Oklahoma City, and Utah are all interested in Donovan Clingan in this draft. He's somebody who's risen up a lot of draft boards. We know the kind of the shortcomings that he has because they are there. Donovan Clingan, much like most prospects in this draft, is not nearly close to a perfect prospect or a sure thing at the NBA level. But he's only 20 years old. He's going to be 20 primarily the most of his rookie career. He does bring shot blocking at over 2.5 blocks per game. He actually got 11.4% of the blocks that he was in position to get, which is that's a major stat. I know it doesn't sound like it. As well as the 7.4 rebounding number does rightfully concern a lot of Bulls fans, but let's put this in perspective. He gets 20.6% of the rebounds when he's on the floor. That percentage would have put him, if it's the NBA, which is not going to translate 100%, but that would put him in the top 5 of the league, right? So he's going to get more rebounds at the NBA level, theoretically. At being 7'2", with a 7'7" wingspan, the 13 points, the 63% true shooting percentage. He was a three-point shooter in high school as well that didn't really come along into the NBA level. But the defense, of course, those type of things. He's better defensively than Vooch. He's a better defensive overall prospect than even a Zach Edey when you look at the NBA level. But overall, there's reasons to understand why the Chicago Bulls and other teams seem to be interested in trading up for Zach Edey. Now, with that said, you got to start looking at it is that when it comes down to what would a trade realistically look like for Zach to move up to Zach Edey. The Houston Rockets and the Detroit Pistons are also teams that have been rumored to be looking more for win now talent and could be willing to trade and move off their picks to get that win now talent. Of course, the conversation around trading up for the Bulls has primarily been centered around the 11th overall pick and Alex Caruso, which, as far as Houston Rockets, could start getting something going there. The Washington Wizards also have been reportedly interested in moving from the 2nd overall pick. I doubt they do it. I think they move a lot of their players on their roster. I don't know if they move on from that 2nd pick. And also the Charlotte Hornets could also be one of those teams that could be looking to actually draft Zach Edey, but also look to move on from that trade reportedly. So at the end of the day, I know that we've talked a lot about the potential of the Bulls just moving on from Alex Caruso to getting Donovan Clingan here in a Chicago Bulls uniform. But the Bulls are realistically going to have to give up other assets. Now, the question is, how much of those? Is it the 11th overall pick? Is it the Portland pick? Is it the future first-round pick? Because now the Bulls are basically, other than next year to the Spurs, have their own first-round picks for the foreseeable future. Is it something like that? Now, you guys know I'm a big guy as far as in the 2025 draft. I'm big on that draft. I think that's the true next time that you have the best chance at getting a franchise-altering talent. But you got to look at yourself and ask, okay, if the Bulls are looking and they see Donovan Clingan as their center of the future, if they think we draft Clingan, we don't have to worry about the center for the next handful of years. We think he's going to develop. We trust that we're going to be able to get the most out of who and what Donovan Clingan could be. What does it get into, right? And so that's where the question gets more. And each of the teams Donovan Clingan is probably not going past the top 7. So you need to get in, ideally, that top 5 to get Donovan Clingan if you want to. And all of the teams that are also in there have also kind of expressed interest in drafting Donovan Clingan. That's probably to drive up the asking price. And so it comes down to the assets that the Bulls would have to give up. We talked about Alex Caruso, talked about the protected Portland pick. We've talked about number 11. And then is there anything else on this roster that the Bulls could look to move, or should they look to move on? And that's the question that the Bulls have to ask themselves. Is moving up in this draft for Clingan, even though there are some centers with tons of potential later in this draft, is it worth what we'd have to give up for future assets? And my biggest concern in that, and I've talked about this before in the show, is that the Bulls have really overpaid to get everything that they've brought into this team. Everything. Lonzo Ball wasn't really looked at as an overpay, but it ended up being one because of his injury, right? In fact, we only got 30-something games out of 3 seasons so far, so that's one. The initial trade for Nikola Vucevic, yes, he was coming off an all-star season, but we ended up overpaying for that. We overpaid for DeMar DeRozan. Alex Caruso wasn't an overpay. Well, we'll give the Bulls that one. That wasn't an overpay at all. We then overpaid to keep Nikola Vucevic on this team. We've basically overpaid for every major asset that we've brought into this team. Almost every single one. And so there is a fear there that if the Bulls get this tunnel vision on moving up in this draft for a player like Donovan Clingan, that they could end up overpaying yet again. And that fear is warranted until they show otherwise. And so you got to have that. That PTSD is there for a lot of Bulls fans as well on the dangers of trading up for a player like Donovan Clingan, especially where there are a lot of quality bigs with really bright futures. Now, again, they may not all hit that potential, but there's some really quality bigs in this draft as well that you can get much later, maybe even trading back, staying at number 11, whatever it is. And that's where the fear comes for Bulls fans with this team. So what would the impact be, though, on trading for Donovan Clingan? And the thing that I want to look at is the two centers that are still currently on this roster as far as right now. Andre Drummond is a free agent, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. If the Bulls were to draft Donovan Clingan, would that then put the Bulls in a position where they feel that they can move Nikola Vucevic for whatever the best offer is? Meaning that, hey, if we don't get a great deal for Vooch, that's cool. We got Clingan. We think he's ready to go. I'm going to talk about the pluses and negatives of that here for right now. The positives of moving on from Nikola Vucevic are that you could clear some cap space because, hopefully you're not getting them. Maybe you get some players back that their deals expire earlier than Vucevic, so you maybe get off those a year earlier than Nikola Vucevic, who has 2 years left on his contract. And then maybe you're clearing a free lane to be able to get Donovan Clingan to come right in. Maybe even at that point, you're keeping Andre Drummond, right? And maybe starting him, or maybe you just have a veteran backup behind Donovan Clingan. So those are kind of the two players that I'm looking at the most. Now, if the Bulls are just look to move Vooch outright and they're trying to look for value back, that's where it's going to get tough. But as a player that maybe you're looking on, much like the Bulls did when they moved on from Tyson Chandler, right? They after they got Ben Wallace, they kind of just moved on from him. Now, Tyson Chandler ended up having a really good career after that, but there's some things to be said with that. So there's a lot of different avenues and routes that the Chicago Bulls could potentially take. If they see Donovan Clingan as their guy, but I'm more interested in what does it mean for the two centers we have on this roster, and maybe even a little bit of Adama Sanogo, who showed basically everything you could want him to show in the G League. And maybe the Bulls do see him as, hey, maybe we feel some confidence on him being on that bench for us as well next year, especially with them, kind of being tight with that luxury tax. So there's a lot of options. I don't necessarily see Donovan Clingan as the guy personally, but if the Bulls do, that's what they're looking at. So let me know what you guys think. If the Bulls do see Donovan Clingan as the guy, do you see the benefit in keeping Nikola Vucevic around until the end of his contract to be the guy that you know what Vooch is going to bring, both good and bad? You know what Nikola Vucevic is going to be, and Vooch hasn't been as bad as what some Bulls fans try to make him out to be either. Do you keep Nikola Vucevic in a case like that because you do have a young rookie, a control deal in Donovan Clingan where you can back up Vooch for maybe even the first 2 years, maybe just that first year? Or do you look to maybe move on Vooch, get any assets back you can for him, and then bring back Andre Drummond? I don't see a world in which all three happen. Maybe I'm tripping on that, but you guys can let me know what you guys think on that down below. But before we go, I got a actual text message that I missed, and I apologize to Los. I missed this text message in the craziness that's been going on this offseason. But it's still a relevant topic and a question, so I want to get into it now. This actually is a couple weeks old, but Los asked this. On today's topic, you made a good point on the Sunday mailbag show saying you don't see the Bulls on the same level as the top eight teams in the East, which means the Bulls are playing for the same thing again next season. Another play-in at best. If they somehow get past that with no one sees that happening, then a first-round exit again next year. When do you think the Bulls fans finally say enough is enough? Just because we demand change doesn't mean it'll happen. I'm not sure what else we can do since Bulls fans are worldwide, and therefore boycotting games won't matter. Millions still would be made worldwide, not to mention the arena workers that will be affected. Not watching games, team are guaranteed TV money with more to come after the new deal. What else can we do, if anything? Thank you for the best daily content. Go Bulls, which can only happen after significant changes. See red. Peace, brother. Thank you to Los for that one. And here's what I'll say. We sometimes as fans, we have a voice, right? And you can show it with your money. You cannot show up to games. You cannot buy Bulls merch. You can do whatever your desire is as far as showing your discontent with this team. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that it depends on what, right? On if the Bulls go significantly younger, and we can tell that this is a team that is now saying, all right, we're more focused on development than competing now. The only reason why the Bulls continually going to the play-in and failing is the big problem that it is because this is a team that is telling us we're trying to compete right now, right? This isn't a team that's like an extremely young team. We got veterans in Vooch, Zach. Zach didn't play a lot. DeMar DeRozan, Torrey Craig, Andre Drummond, right? On this roster, and when you, not to say that we won't ever have no veterans, because we always will, but when you are in that position and you are clearly telling us via your actions and your roster that you're trying to go for it now, and the best that you're getting is a 9th seed, that's where the problem lies in, right? A team, like the Houston Rockets, for example, that missed out on the play-in. They sit at a place that's much brighter than the Chicago Bulls missing the play-in, not only because of that last leg of the season, how they played, but because they finished at 500, and they're a young developing team that the player in Şengün that they were building around was down for the majority of the season, right? So their bright spot is up. So, it's a very different thing when you look at where those teams are, right? The Orlando Magic didn't make it out the first round, but guess what? They're a team that has a brighter future because of, not only just because they made the playoffs, but because most of that team is young, and we understand that team is going to take some time, right? We understand that. So it's a lot that goes into where you are and how you're viewed. So if the Bulls, for example, were to move on from DeMar, were to move on from Zach, and then this is a team that is competing for a play-in spot, and even if they barely miss out on it, or if they do, get to the play-in and lose but look competitive, it's a much different view that you're having on that than what you had on a team that's telling you, hey, we're trying to compete here and we're just not getting it done. So I think that's a big part in this, is that the Bulls, where they are and where they're telling us they want to be, it's just they're falling short of that. So I think ultimately, yeah, Bulls fans need to be boisterous. Bulls fans need to, but until we have a front office that prioritizes winning over anything, and notice I didn't say ownership because, again, Jerry Reinsdorf is going to be Jerry Reinsdorf, but it comes down to making smart decisions as a front office, drafting well over a period of time for sustained success, having players that develop here, right? Having the player development. Those are the biggest and most important things for me, and that I view it as. And if I start seeing those things consistently from the Bulls, I can be more patient on us reaching the overall success, because we're doing the things that, to me, would then show once we get there, we'll be able to sustain it for longer. That's my personal opinion, but great question there from Los. Los always asks great questions. Trying to start catching up on a lot of the text messages. I'm sorry that I missed the text. I'm so voicemail focused. I missed text and emails, but we're getting back in gear. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the channel at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.